Okay, so we're gonna be doing workflows for the most part today, and these are going to be custom SharePoint designer workflows. Okay, so let's go back and then start just messing around with SharePoint designer, and let's really just jump right into the workflows. So I click on workflows, and then I click on list workflow, and then I go to AQL contacts and name this workflow AQL contacts workflow. Okay, and so this is the first thing, and what I have as soon as I'm creating a workflow, the first thing that comes to my mind is the name of the workflow, the description, and then I get to choose between if I want to work on SharePoint 2010 workflow or SharePoint 2013 workflow. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and choose SharePoint 2013 workflow. So these are two different templates. For starters, it's kind of like the same thing. As you go deeper, you're gonna learn that there are quite a few differences. Okay. Takes a little bit of time generating the workflow. Okay. Okay, and so this is what we get. So this is kind of like a blank canvas where you can go ahead and start painting your workflow. Okay, and so there are primarily on this canvas, you can primarily lay these steps over here. You can insert these steps over here, or these conditions, or these actions. And for the most part, so these conditions, there are just a few conditions, but these actions are the one that you might really have to go ahead and really memorize. Okay, so you get an understanding of what are the actions, what are the things that you can actually do within a workflow. Okay, so and these whole sections are divided in, start with here, core actions, kind of like the really core ones, like for example if you want to perform some sort of a calculation. Okay, or if you want to send an email out from a workflow. Okay, list actions are the ones that you're already familiar with, like for example check in an item automatically, check out an item, okay, copy a document, create list item, okay, delete an item, okay, or discard items, or update a list item. Okay, so these are just a few workflows that you can definitely actions that you can definitely play around with and then do a lot of things. And then right, right, so you get to actually use a lot of these. Okay, uh, so let's go ahead and start. So what I just did is that I associated a workflow with this list over here, AQL contacts list. Okay, so I just want to go ahead and write down very basic workflow, and in this very basic workflow, what I'm going to do is that uh, if this person, if this contact starts from, if this contact is in a certain city, then I'm going to write down the region, okay, of the city. Like for example, if this contact is in Chicago, then I'm going to have the workflow automatically fire and then fill out a certain column in here, which is going to be the region. Like if it's Chicago, it's Midwest. Okay, if it's New York, it's Northeast. Okay, so let's go ahead and try doing something as basic as that. Okay, so which is write a workflow which will fill the region column with the region the user is in, depending on the city. Okay, or the state. In this case, let's just go ahead and base our logic only on the city. So for that reason, I'm just going to go ahead and add a real quick column, which is going to be region. Okay, and this is going to be a single line of text, or I can also make it a choice column. Might as well just make a choice. Okay, and the choice is going to be Northeast, and Midwest. So let's just say that these are the only two regions that I have. Okay. Uh, scroll down. I don't have any choice. Add to all the content types. Okay. And then hit on OK. And I'm just gonna go ahead and arrange my list a little bit. Modify view. And I'm gonna move region all the way up in the top. I think it's the last one right there. So right next to the city might be. So city is 7, so I'm gonna move the region to 8. Scroll down, hit on OK. Alright, and I'm just gonna go back and then make the city as a mandatory column. Okay, so that there's always a city in there. Click on city and scroll down, and required that this column contain information. I'm gonna say yes. Okay. And also, one of the things that I would like to do is change this from a single line of text to a choice column. Okay, which is Chicago and Parkridge. Okay, Chicago, and then actually I would like to make it capital C. Parkridge, and then this Plains, and then New York, and then Stanford. Okay, so just choice of a few cities right here. Okay, so far the only thing that I did is I have a AQL contacts list, okay, which has got primarily two main columns, city and region. Okay, so now we're gonna write down a basic workflow which is going to check the city, and then depending on the value in the city is going to update the region column. Okay, so let's go back to my SharePoint Designer workflows, and here it is. Okay, and now what I need to do is I'm gonna go ahead and start using the action. Okay, so it's going to take us a little bit of time to get familiarized with the actions and with the conditions and actions, but then you're gonna see that anybody with a little bit of programming experience in the past, you're gonna see, okay, you know what, I've done this 1,000 times. Anybody who does not have any kind of programming experience, you're gonna see that it's very logical. You know, so the first thing that I just mentioned is if the city is Chicago, then the region is Midwest, right? So there's an if and then there's a then, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and literally write that down as if. Okay, so that's a condition. There's only one condition, which is if, and I can go ahead and write down. So now there's this concept of current item. Okay, so let's just go ahead and just browse through these real fast, and then in later classes we're going to talk more about what the current item basically means. Okay, but as a one-liner, the current item is the item on which the workflow is running, which is the value that the users entered for the current row that on which the workflow is going to be firing. So I'm going to say current item, and which column is that? Which column am I checking? City, right? Okay, so I'm going to choose city. Okay, so I'm going to say if the city value that the users entered is equal to, okay, what? Chicago? Okay, right? And in here, I'm just going to go ahead and write down an action. Now remember, the line goes if the city is Chicago, then the region is Parkridge. Okay, which means that I need to assign a value to the region column, right? So it's going to be, scroll down, and then I'm going to go down to the list actions. In here, there's an update list item in here. Okay, I'm going to choose update list item. Okay, and then in here, I'm going to go ahead and write down the current item, and now I'm saying that update this list item with these values, which is the region column is now Midwest. Okay, does it make sense? All right, and then I can be using as many, actually I don't want to be doing that. Okay, so let's just focus on one right now. Okay, so as of right now, this is how it is. If the current item is equal to Chicago, then I'm saying that update the value to Midwest. Okay, so now the thing is that I need to save it, and then I need to publish it. Do not forget publishing it. This is not like SharePoint Design or other things where you just click on save and then it just gets saved. Okay, so this definitely gets saved, but the thing is that if you want to bring this workflows in real life action, you got to click the publish button. Okay, which is you're saying that, okay, you know what, I know what I'm doing. Let's just go ahead and get this workflow attached to the list and get it up and running. Okay, so I just saved it and then I published it. And let's now go back to the workflow AQL contacts, and let's see if the workflow settings has the workflow associated with it. So I go back in workflow settings, and do I see anything in here? No. Okay. One of the things that I would like to do is I'm going back to the AQL list, and then for this workflow is set to allow this workflow to be manually started. I'm going to go ahead and check the option start workflow automatically when an item is created, so that the workflow starts automatically. Okay, and now I can save it and doing the same thing again, start and publish. Oh yeah, I'm gonna hit on publish. Let's see what we get. Yes, so error in the workflow prevents it from functioning correctly. Okay, so let's take a look at what that error is. Click on edit workflow, goes back right in here, and then I can check for errors over here. Let's see if there are any errors. I think that the error might be I have to write down certain step over here, which is end the workflow. So it's almost like I'm saying that, okay, you know what, after you're done, just go ahead and end the workflow. Okay, so let's check for errors again, and there are no errors. And now let's go ahead and hit on publish. Alright, so here we are, and then so we have the workflow. I'm just going to go back to the workflow settings of AQL contacts list and then refresh it and see if now I can see the workflow. Okay, and I do. I see a workflow by the name AQL contacts. Remember, this is the name that I created. Okay, so now let's go back to AQL contacts workflow. Click open that, and I want to see if I see the column in here, AQL contacts column, the workflow column, which shows the status. So I'm just going to rearrange my rows over here, rearrange my columns over here a little bit by clicking on modify view, and then move it all the way up in the top. Might be right after, so I have region and then I have city. Hold on one second. So city, right? So I want to make this as 9. Okay, and then I want to scroll down, and then 9. This is 10, might be. Okay, scroll down, hit on OK, and this is what I have. So now let's go ahead and start entering data. Okay, let's see how this works. Okay, so I'm gonna have Brad Pitt. Okay, alright, so scroll down, and then I have the region as Chicago. So I'm gonna choose Park Ridge. Okay, scroll all the way down, and our region is still down at the bottom. Why is that? Oh, that's fine. Okay, yeah, 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 that's fine. Okay, so and this is what I have. Um, so let's take a look at the status of the workflow. Okay, hit on Fi, and it says stage one. Okay, do I have a region? I don't have a region yet, and then it's still on stage one. Okay, so oh yeah, actually my bad. It's my bad. Yeah, it's my bad. Yeah. Actually, I'm just gonna go ahead and arrange these columns a little more. I'm gonna delete the columns that I don't need. Okay, like literally delete them. Okay, this is a lot of columns, and I don't really need a lot of these columns. Scroll down, hit on delete. Okay, so let's go ahead and try entering a new one. Okay, Clooney guy. Oops. George Clooney. Okay, and then I'm gonna scroll down, and this time it's going to be Chicago. Okay, so that's a good point. We just entered Chicago. Somebody told that. Did you say that? Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, and this time we're gonna choose Chicago. Okay, hit on save, and do the same thing again. Okay, which is so the thing about these workflows is that at times they take a little bit of time to actually kickstart. Okay, so I have George Clooney right here, and look at that. I already have Midwest. Okay, so it shows the stage as stage one, and we'll go back and then fix that why it says stage one. But then you can actually see over here that it actually did evaluate the whole thing. So I can have complex logic in there or just basic logic like what I have. Okay, so let's go back and take a look at it. Number one, I can actually go ahead and change this to in progress. Okay, so these are the stages. So unlike in SharePoint 2010 and the previous version, you could never modify the name of these stages, but in SharePoint 2013 you get to name it whatever you want. Okay, and then I can actually add steps over here as well. Oops, let me go ahead and delete that. Okay, or I can have, you know, any number of steps over here, and these steps actually do the transitioning. So right now I'm gonna have in progress. Okay, and right after that it's actually gonna end the workflow. Okay, or I can have many more stages. Okay, and so the name of the second stage can be completed. Okay, and the first stage is going to move to the second stage, and in the second stage I'm just going to go ahead and kill it. I'll explain to you what I'm doing in a second. Another workflow. So what we just saw was that it just keeps saying stage one over here, right? Stage one right here. Okay, but what I want this to actually say completed. I want it to show in progress when it's running. I want it to show completed when it's done. Okay, so I just organized things a little bit. That's all I did. I added two stages over here. Okay, I gave the name of the first stage as in progress. I gave the name of the second stage as completed. Okay, and then every stage has got this transitioning stage, which means that what do you want to do, after this code is run. So I'm saying in the first stage is that go to the stage whose name is completed. And in the second stage, I don't really have any line of code over here. I'm just saying terminate the workflow. So this way, it's always going to say completed and then end. Okay, so let's go ahead and publish this again. So I don't have to save it. If I'm actually done, I might as well click on publish instead of clicking on save. Okay, but let's just say that, as I said, let's just say that if you are done only halfways and then you want to take a break and then come back again, so that's when you click on save, and then might be come back tomorrow, open it up again, finish it off, and then click on publish. Alright, so this workflow is published. Let's go back and click on a new item again. So hold on, we didn't actually have is it Damon? Okay, Matt Damon. Alright, so let's scroll down, and then I'm still going to choose Chicago. Again, the only reason why I'm choosing Chicago is because my program is not handled is not programmed to handle any other city other than Chicago as of right now. But eventually we're gonna have like a whole big load of it. Okay. And then I hit on region and click on save. Takes a little bit of time to run. Okay, so like for example, as soon as I save it, you see that there is no status for the workflow over here, right? So hit on refresh, F5, and there it is. It says completed now, and it looks proper, it looks professional. Okay, and it's got the Midwest region. So so the older, yeah, that's a very good question. Are the older ones going to change or not? Okay, so that's a real awesome question. So here's the thing: for that question, you need to understand the life cycle of a workflow. When it's done, it's dead. Okay, so there's this concept of active workflows, and there's this concept of dead workflows. Dead workflows are done. So that process, that thread is done. Okay, so if we actually go back in here and click on list settings, I'm sorry, workflow settings. Okay, then look at that, workflows in progress. There's 0. Okay, so these workflows are really small. They start and then they stop. Okay, and when they stop, they are done. Okay, so and also what you got to keep in mind is that, let's just say for the sake of conversation, and this happens in practical life, which is these workflows, they run for a humongous period of time, which is, let's just say that the vacation management workflow. Okay, so you initiate a vacation management and you're going to vacation a month from now. All right, so the manager is not in the office, so of course he's going to come back tomorrow, or might be day after tomorrow. He might be on vacation. He's going to come back a week later, and then he's going to look into that workflow, right? He's going to look into those tasks generated. Okay, but till that period of time, the workflow is just in progress. So what I'm trying to say is that the lifespan of a workflow can be just a couple seconds, just like in our case, but you can actually even make it much longer. Budget management. Okay, so there are workflows that we have done in the past for companies, which actually manages the budget of a company, which is, let's just say all you guys are directors of every department in a company. Okay, and the workflow has to go through all of you, and we're setting a budget of $5 million for acquisitions. Okay, so this company is actually acquiring a different company. Okay, and now this workflow, and we're planning this acquisition next year in 2018. So this whole process has to be approved by all you guys. Okay, which means that it's going to take a lot of time, might be 6 months for all of you guys to study the paperwork, and give your approval. Okay, so the lifespan of a workflow is that long. Okay, now the good part is that even though that workflow is so long, but if there are any kind of modifications, like for example, I create the first workflow with so I created the workflow, and when I did, it was real basic. It actually had the stage 1 thing in it. Okay, and then I modified the workflow, and now I have completed in 2 different proper stages in there. Okay, so if these workflows were like long workflows and these were in progress, then it would actually show that there's a first version of workflow running, and then there's a second version of workflow running as well. Okay, so you have to understand this. You have to understand the lifespan of the workflow, how these workflows work. Okay, so once you keep modifying, tomorrow you come back and then modify the same workflow again. Okay, but then if that workflow is already in progress, it's not ended, but it's still in progress, it's still running. Okay, then in the workflow settings over here, you're gonna see AQL contacts, and then let's just say there are 5 instances of this workflow running. You're gonna see that. If there were previous versions of these workflows, like for example, you create this workflow and then you published it, and now you come back today and then you modify the same version and then you publish it again. Okay, so you're gonna see both those 2 versions over here. If the first version was already running, then you would already see that over here. Okay, and if you see the second version running, you're gonna see the second version over here as well. Does it make sense? And then it's gonna show a list of all the different workflows. Okay, sounds pretty good. So add a workflow or remove a workflow. I can go ahead and unassociate this workflow from here. Okay, so Look at that, SharePoint 2013, and it says that equal contact is a workflow. There are 0 instances of the workflow running. Okay, and then I'm saying that allow this workflow to be running on this list. So here's a question. Okay, what does the instances mean? What? Say again. No, so here's the thing. Remember when we were creating this designer, in the designer, when we were actually working on this update item, there's this concept of current item. Okay, and even though this is an extremely basic concept, but these are the basics on which the workflows are done. If you don't understand these concepts, you're going to be confused down the line. So this current item, what does current item mean? Okay, now here's the thing. When you publish a workflow, or when the user enters a new line item, and that's when the workflow starts. And when the workflow starts, it's got these 3 different options, which is allow this workflow to be manually started, start workflow automatically when an item is created, start workflow automatically when an item is changed. So there are these 3 triggers. Okay, so now what you do is that after you publish the workflow, you go ahead and enter values in the list. You go ahead and enter a brand new contact. Okay, and as soon as you do that, the workflow kickstarts. A new workflow is created. A new instance of a workflow is created. Okay, so what I mean to say is that there's one-to-one association between a workflow and a list item. Okay, so every single so a workflow belongs not to the whole list. Actually, I'm sorry, a workflow belongs to the whole list, but a workflow instance belongs only to the list item. Okay, you need to understand that. So a workflow instance is local only to a list item. Okay, as soon as the list is created, that's when a workflow instance is created. Okay, so that workflow instance belongs to that list item and not to the whole list. Okay, that's when the concept of current item comes in. What does current item mean? Current item means that, means the list item on which the workflow just fired. That's what it means, and there could be only one. Okay, so current item is basically the list item on which the workflow just fired. Okay, so that's the reason you can just say, hey, what's the current item of this workflow instance, and then it's going to be just one single list item and nothing more than that. And that's the reason I'm so easily able to say, okay, from the current item, get these values from the columns. Okay, so let's go ahead and do another workflow here. Okay, let's go ahead and do a brand new workflow here. Okay, so user enters the first name and the last name, concatenate them, and show in the full name column. This is the second workflow. Okay, and this one's going to be much easier than the first one because we don't have an if condition over here. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and create a brand new custom list. Okay, which is going to be names, employee names. Okay. Okay, so here's employee names list and edit list columns. Okay, and so there's only one column in here, which is title column. I'm gonna rename this to last name. Okay, and let's add 2 more columns. Oh, come on. And the third one's going to be full name. Okay, so nice and easy. So if it says star sign over here, this means that you need to save it. It's not saved. Click on save, and now it's actually saved. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create workflows on this list. I'm just going to refreshing this. I hit on F5, and F5 pretty much just refreshes, resyncs SharePoint Designer with the list. Okay, so let's go to workflows, and this is the custom workflow that we had created in the past. Let's go ahead and create another list workflow, and over here I should see employee names. Yes, I do. And concatenate. That's the name that I'm going to give to. That's the name that I'm going to give to my workflow. The only code that is going to have the purpose of this workflow is going to combine the first name and the last name and put in the full name column. Okay, so hit on OK, and there it is. So to start with, the first thing I'm going to do is make this in progress. Okay, and then add another stage over here and make this as completed. Okay, and then just the basic thing that we did, add an action here. So these actions are, what you see in the drop down, this is pretty contextual, which means that depending on where you have clicked, it's going to show the relevant values. So if I click over here, it's going to show me a whole big set of actions. But if I click on here, then it's going to show me only one action which applies in this area, which is go to a stage and go to the stage is completed. Okay, in here again, I'm going to go ahead and set up go to a stage, and the go to a stage over here is going to be another workflows. Okay, and now let's go ahead and start writing down our logic here, which is no conditions. It's as nice and easy, which is if there is any first name, actually I'm not even checking for any conditions. I'm just saying take first name, take last name, combine that, and then update that in yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at what I have. I know for a fact that I have to go ahead and use the update list item. I know for a fact I have to do that. Okay, but the thing is that if I'm actually, or I can actually use this. Actually, let's go ahead and use set field in the current item. This is more appropriate. Update list item is when you want to update other lists. Okay, you could do that, but then set field in the current item is when you want to go ahead and update a certain field in the current item itself. Okay, so this time we're going to go ahead and use it. But other than that, for concatenation part, I have to use another action, and this time I'm going to try using do calculations. Okay, so I deleted the do calculations because that's more for numeric calculations. So I'm going to go directly to set a field in the current item. Okay, and then the first thing is that which field is that? Okay, so it's the first name field, right? Okay, it's going to show me the list of all the fields that I have in my list. So I'm going to choose first name, full name, sorry. And then so the value now. So now I click on the value, and then either I can just type something in there, but that's going to be hard coded, and that's not what I want. I want to make this as dynamic. It's supposed to do certain calculations. Okay, so I click on fx, which is kind of like the formula. This is where I define the formula. My bad. I'm going to click the ellipse over here. This is where I can actually define a formula. I can go ahead and set up things that I have to do over here. Okay, so let's go back and get started with using the list item, which is set field in current item. Okay, and then I click on field, and then the full name, and then the value over here. I'm going to click on the ellipse where I can go ahead and write down the formula, and it's going to be, let's go ahead and choose those columns. Either I can go ahead and type it, and then any typos, it's gonna cause me problems, which is gonna take me hours to fix it, or just go ahead and select first name. Okay, space, nothing, and then last name, and that's it. So it's gonna show you exactly how it's written over here. Okay, and then hit on OK. And now just one thing that I don't want to forget. Well, I want to go ahead and okay. So now I'm gonna step back to the workflow editor here, and then click on start workflow automatically when an item is created. Okay, now let's go ahead and hit on publish. Alright, man, so let's go ahead and enter okay. I'm not going to enter anything in full name. Hit on save. Let's see what we get. Okay, nothing yet. Hit on F5. There you go. Last name first. Okay. So, oh, actually, I didn't enter it right. Okay, this is first name, last name. Okay. Now, so here's the thing. If I go back and then edit this, let's just say if I go back and edit it, okay, and fix it, okay, and not mess with full name, what do you think is going to happen? Huh? Yeah, but I just changed the values here. What's going to happen is this now this is supposed to be Samir Muhammad, right? Samir Muhammad. So, and I can hit on refresh. What's going to happen? Nothing. Okay, the reason being that I need to check this option as well. Start workflow automatically when an item is changed. Okay, so once I do that,
You don't want to do it for all the workflows, right?
yeah,
You do it for
some of them, not all of them.
That's why you have to manually check if you need it.
Yes, yes, you're right. And then F9. Okay, so now if I go back and then modify this item over here with, I don't know, just like a dot over here. Okay, hit on save. Let's see what I get. There it is. Okay, so now this workflow kickstarts even with modifications. Okay, so let's take a break here. No questions so far? Okay, so we're gonna do another workflow, and this is going to be a pretty basic one as well, which is going to be, it's going to sum the cost and the tax entered and then show that as the full price, as the total price. Okay, so let's go ahead and create another quick list over here. Alright, so this is going to be, let's just say, the product name. Okay, and then I'm going to add 3 more columns. No more columns. Cost, more columns. Tax, no more column. Total cost. Okay, so it's going to sum of the cost and the tax, and then show that in the total cost column. This is also using workflows. So everything is going to be using workflows. So let's go back to workflows. Click on list workflow. Product cost, and then total cost, and then exactly the same thing. You know, we're going to add another stage over here. This first one is going to be in progress. Okay, and then there's going to be a second stage which is going to be completed. Okay, and then within transition to stage over here, I'm going to say jump over to the completer stage as part of the action. Okay, over here again the same thing, go to a stage, but over here it's going to be jump to the next stage completed, and over here it's going to be another workflow. Okay, nice and easy. Now in here, so I have to do something. What I have to do is I have to do a calculation over here. Okay, and then update that, right? So I cannot do calculations. So let's just say for the sake of conversation, I go ahead and jump right on the column on the action that I've used the most, and now I can actually see that under recent actions. Okay, it's actually in right here in list actions, but then just for each, SharePoint puts everything that you have recently used under recent actions. I click on set field in the column, and what I can do is I can go ahead and put total cost over here, and then in the value click on FX, and you know, so actually I can't even, okay, so since this is a numeric column, SharePoint is smart enough to not show me that ellipse over here. Remember those 3 dots which actually open up that other editor in the last program. So it's smart enough to not even let me do that mistake of trying to do the calculation within that editor, because it just doesn't support calculations. So this is where I have to use one of the core actions, which is do calculations. Okay, and here I have calculate value plus value. Okay, so what's the first value? It's going to be current item again and the cost plus. So what kind of calculation is it? Is it plus? Is it minus? Is it multiply, divide, or mod? So this is plus. Okay, and then what's the value here? So the value is, the second value that I'm adding up is tax, right? So here's the thing. I give this action 3 values. Okay, the first number, the second number, and the operation between the two, which is plus. Okay, so now consider this as a magic box, man. You fitted these 3 things and it's gonna give you back the value, right? Exactly same as a calculator. You feed those 3 things in it, it's gonna give you back the value. And how do you get the value in a calculator? You visually see that, right? But you can't do that over here. It's gonna pass it back to you in a certain memory location, and you gotta give the name of this certain memory location. Actually, it already has the name of the memory location, and those memory locations are known as variables. Okay, has anybody heard about variables before? Ever before? Okay, so variables is really nothing but a memory location. Okay, so what it's going to do is that it's going to run its calculations and dump that in the memory location, and then, which is kind of like a little technical way of doing things, but more user-friendly, is there's going to be a name for that memory location, and you could retrieve it by just calling that name of the memory location, and these are known as variables. Okay, so you see that right here, it says output to the variable CLC. Okay, I can actually change the value of this variable to anything that I want. Okay, the default is CLC. Okay, so I'm not going to mess with the default value, but so what this means is that it's going to run this calculation and then dump it in this variable over here. I can use this variable anywhere where I want, within the stage over here. Okay, so here I'm going to go ahead and set it to set total cost to. Now if I click on CLC on the value and click on effects, it pops open this box where I can go ahead and select the column, which the way that we have been doing so far. But this also let me select variables as well, which are present in my program, and there's only one variable I have right now, which is CLC. Okay, so look at that. I changed the data source from current item to variables, workflow variables, and parameters. And now it shows me all the variables that I have in my program, which is only one. Okay, I hit on OK, and there it is. So now it's saying that set total cost to the value stored in this variable. Okay, so let's go ahead and publish this. Let's go back to employee name over here. Actually, not employee name. We gotta go find our recent list. Scroll down, and here's the product cost. Okay, so I'm gonna say I'm buying a laptop. Okay, and the cost of the laptop is $1,200, and the tax is $100. Okay, so I want 0.32 versus point, I don't know. Yeah, let's try if it works or not. Okay. And so I hit on save. I'm not sure if the workflow fired. Okay, so I'm going to start the workflow manually. Workflows.
So every time you create a list, you have to change the settings.
Yes, yes. It's on the level of the workflow. Okay, so you can have 10 different workflows on a list, and all of them can have different settings on the triggering part. Here, so look at that. It just ran its calculations. Okay, and this is what I get. This is the total cost. Does it make sense? So let's go back and then set the right value. Set these over here. Okay, set the right triggers. Go back and hit on publish. Now that I changed the settings in here, and so this is set to automatically start, I'm going to go ahead and enter more items over here. Okay, so I think if you're going to be buying iPads, and an iPad costs $700 and the tax amount on it is $50, okay, I hit on save. Let's see what I get right there. Okay, in progress and then completed. Okay, so, and I can go back and say, hold on one second, that was in 700, but that was like 712.45. Okay, hit on save. Let's see what I get. In progress completed. Okay, 762.45.
It's because of you changing the settings.
Yes. Okay, so um,